It is 2:47 in the morning. The South China Sea is black and completely still. On the bridge of the USS Gerald Ford, the watch officer is running through routine position reports. The carrier strike group is operating 200 miles west of the Philippines. Well, within waters that China has claimed as its own for decades. This is not unusual. U.S. carriers pass through here regularly. It is a message, a deliberate, consistent signal. But tonight, something is different. At 2:51, the Ford's radar flags a contact, 180 miles to the northwest. Then 3 more, then 11. Within 4 minutes, the system has identified 34 separate surface contacts, moving in a coordinated formation at 28 knots, directly toward the strike group. At the same time, electronic warfare sensors detect fire control radar emissions. Not surveillance radar. Fire control. Someone out there has locked onto the Ford. The watch officer does not hesitate. General quarters is sounded. 5,000 sailors wake up running. This is what actually happens next, minute by minute, decision by decision. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why the outcome is far more complicated than either side's propaganda suggests. If you want to understand what modern naval conflict actually looks like, subscribe. We cover scenarios nobody else is touching. What China is actually bringing. Before we go minute by minute through this scenario, you need to understand what China is actually capable of deploying. Right now. Not 5 years ago. Right now. China's primary carrier is the Fujian, launched in 2022. Equipped with electromagnetic catapults similar to the Ford's own system. It carries approximately 60 aircraft, including the J-15B fighter and the J-35 stealth aircraft. But the carrier itself is not what makes a Chinese strike group dangerous. What makes it dangerous is what surrounds it. A Chinese carrier strike group typically includes 4 to 6 Type 055 destroyers, each one carrying 112 vertical launch cells, anti-ship missiles, surface-to-air missiles, anti-submarine weapons. The Type 055 is not a small ship. At 12,000 tons, it is larger than most American cruisers. Then there is the DF-21D, the missile that changed everything. Called the carrier killer by military analysts, it is a ballistic missile specifically designed to hit moving aircraft carriers at ranges exceeding 1,000 miles. It flies at hypersonic speeds on its terminal approach. No carrier in history has ever faced a weapon designed specifically to destroy it at that range and speed. Whether it actually works as advertised against a fully defended carrier strike group is a question military planners spend enormous resources trying to answer. And the honest answer is, nobody knows for certain, because it has never been used in combat. The Ford's first 8 minutes. Back to 2:51 a.m. General quarters has been called. Here is exactly what is happening across the strike group in the first 8 minutes. On the Ford itself, flight deck crews are already moving. 2 F-18F Super Hornets are being armed with AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles. Within 6 minutes of general quarters, the first aircraft is on the catapult. The Ford's email system can put a fully armed fighter in the air every 45 seconds when operating at full capacity. Below decks, the electronic warfare system is already jamming Chinese targeting radars. This is not passive. Active jamming degrades the accuracy of incoming missiles. The Chinese fire control radar begins showing anomalous readings. 2 Arleigh Burke destroyers, positioned 30 miles ahead of the Ford, are rotating their radar arrays to track inbound contacts. Each destroyer carries 90 to 96 vertical launch cells. Standard Missile 3, Standard Missile 6. The destroyers are not just escorts. They are the carrier's primary missile defense layer. There is also a Virginia-class submarine operating silently 40 miles from the Ford. Its position is unknown to the Chinese strike group. 8 minutes after general quarters. 4 aircraft airborne. 2 destroyers at full combat readiness. Active jamming across 3 frequency bands. The Chinese strike group is still 172 miles away. Then, the situation changes again. The decision nobody wants to make. Here's the reality that every war game involving China and the United States Navy eventually hits. The moment a Chinese missile is fired at a U.S. carrier, or a U.S. weapon is fired at a Chinese warship, the world changes permanently. This is not a regional conflict. This is the beginning of a war between the 2 largest economies on Earth, both armed with nuclear weapons. The commander of the Ford strike group has authority to defend his ships if attacked. That is clear. What is not clear is the definition of attacked. Is a fire control radar lock an attack? Is a missile launch an attack the moment it leaves the rail, or only when it crosses a certain distance? These are not abstract legal questions. They are decisions that have to be made in minutes, in the dark, with incomplete information, by human beings under extreme stress. In our scenario, at 3:04 a.m., a Chinese destroyer launches 2 YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles. The Chinese government will later claim it was a warning shot, fired to demonstrate capability, not intended to hit the Ford. The Ford's CIWS phalanx system does not care about intent. It detects inbound supersonic objects on a collision course and engages automatically. Both Chinese missiles are destroyed at 1.4 miles. No one on the Ford fired a weapon. An automated system did. But 2 Chinese missiles have been shot down. In Beijing, that is an act of war. What the Ford can actually do. Let us step back from the politics for a moment and talk about pure military capability. Because this is where the Ford's actual advantage becomes clear. In a full commitment strike scenario, the Ford can put 40 to 50 aircraft in the air within 30 minutes of general quarters. Each F-18E or F carries a combat radius of approximately 450 miles with a full weapons load. The AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missile has a range of 75 miles. The newer LRASM has a range exceeding 200 miles and uses autonomous target recognition to approach from unpredictable angles. What this means practically is that the Ford can destroy targets 200 miles away while staying completely outside the effective engagement range of most Chinese anti-ship weapons. The carrier never needs to move toward the threat. It extends its reach through aircraft. The submarine carries Mark 48 torpedoes and can fire Tomahawk cruise missiles. A Virginia-class submarine is nearly undetectable by current Chinese anti-submarine warfare technology. Here is the honest military assessment. In a straight exchange of fire between the Ford strike group and a Chinese carrier strike group at 150 miles, the United States wins. Not cleanly, not without damage, not without losses. But the combination of superior electronic warfare, better trained pilots, longer-range precision strike weapons, and submarine support gives the U.S. strike group a decisive edge. The problem is that this scenario does not happen at 150 miles from the Chinese coastline. And distance from China's shore changes everything. The complication nobody admits. Here is what the US carrier would destroy China narrative leaves out. The South China Sea is approximately 600 miles from the Chinese mainland at its widest point. From Chinese land-based airfields on Hainan Island and the artificial islands China has built in the Spratly Chain, Chinese fighter aircraft can reach the Ford's position without ever taking off from a carrier. China has roughly 1,500 combat aircraft within range of the South China Sea. The DF-26 ballistic missile has a range of 2,500 miles. It was specifically described by Chinese military officials as capable of striking moving aircraft carriers. The DF-26 does not need the Chinese carrier to be anywhere near the Ford. It launches from Chinese territory. It is already aimed. What the Ford strike group is operating against in the South China Sea is not just a carrier strike group. It is operating against an integrated anti-access and area denial system that includes land-based missiles, land-based aircraft, submarines, surface ships, and cyber attacks on communication systems, all coordinated simultaneously. The Ford can defeat the Chinese carrier. The Ford cannot single-handedly defeat the entirety of China's military within 2,500 miles of its coastline. That is a fundamentally different problem. How it actually ends. In our scenario, the Ford does not launch a full strike. The Rear Admiral recommends a controlled, limited response. 2 F-18s fly a low-altitude supersonic pass 15 miles from the Chinese carrier. Close enough that every radar on the Chinese ships tracks them clearly. Far enough that it is not an attack. It is a demonstration. The Chinese carrier strike group reduces speed. The formation begins a gradual turn to the northwest. It does not retreat. It repositions. In military language, the Chinese side is de-escalating without losing face. By 6 a.m., the two strike groups are 300 miles apart and moving in opposite directions. No ships were sunk. No pilots were lost. No war was started. 2 Chinese cruise missiles were destroyed. 2 American fighters flew a supersonic demonstration pass. The total military exchange lasted 14 minutes. But here is what actually changed. Intelligence analysts on both sides will spend the next 6 months studying every radar track, every electronic emission, every timing data point from that 14-minute exchange. Both sides learned more about each other's real capabilities in those 14 minutes than they had in years of satellite surveillance. The real question. The USS Gerald Ford is the most powerful warship ever built. In a direct engagement at sea, it has no equal operating today. The Chinese Navy has built something remarkable in 20 years. But it is still not the US Navy in open water. Ship for ship. But the question of whether the Ford can win a battle is not the same question as whether a war in the South China Sea can be won by anyone. 2 nuclear-armed countries, deeply connected global economies, automated weapon systems that can escalate faster than diplomatic channels can respond. The carrier is not just a weapon, it is a signal. And signals, in the wrong moment, can be misread. What happens in those 14 minutes? Between the first radar contact and the first automated system firing, may be the most important military question of the next 20 years. If this changed how you think about what is happening in the Pacific, drop carrier in the comments. Subscribe for more scenarios nobody else is covering. New video every week. See you next time.